Hi everybody, it's Lynn Hayes. Welcome back to my channel where I give you all the astrological information you need to have a great week. If you're new here, welcome. I post new videos every Monday about the astrological influences of the week and occasionally other important information as well. Please hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I post a new video. In this week's video, we're heading into Virgo season, so I'll be talking about what that means and how we can get the most out of it. I'll also be talking, of course, about Mars. That's going to be a factor throughout the rest of the year, and I'll be talking about what that means right now, and Mars is virtually at a standstill in the sky as it prepares to turn retrograde. And then keep watching, because towards the end of the video, I'll be talking about where the moon is this week and how to best use those energies. The sun and You want to come up here? The Sun and Mercury are both in Virgo right now. I have a little friend here who decided he wanted to join me. So Virgo is an interesting sign. It's not one of the easier signs to navigate, as all of my Virgo friends will know. Virgo is actually an earth sign, but it's also mutable. Earth is not at all mutable by its nature. Earth is stable. It builds a strong foundation. When we're talking about mutability, we're talking about adaptability, changeability. Earth does not change very quickly. This duality is present in the Virgo personality and the Virgo experience when we have multiple planets that are in Virgo, as we do now. Even though Virgo is an earth sign, it's ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is the planet of the mind, but it also is very changeable. You've heard of mercurial, it means unpredictable, subject to change. There can be a lot of fluidity and flexibility with Mercury. It's called the shapeshifter. So Virgo is always attempting to be that stable, solid, structured organizer of the details. The influence of Mercury creates change and also brings that interest in creating structures into the mental plane. So this tends to make Virgo somewhat anxious as they try to integrate the stability of Earth with the fluidity of air. So during this process, we are more aware of the things that need to be changed, the things that need to be improved, and how to go about making that happen. The Mercury influence of Virgo encourages us to learn how to take things apart and put them back together in a way that might be more effective. So while the Sun and Mercury are both in the sign of Virgo. So while the Sun and Mercury are both in the sign of Virgo, there is a lot of mental activity, but unlike when we're dealing with Gemini, which is very active and very distractible, Gemini is interested in everything and has trouble being focused. When we're dealing with Virgo, there's a strong desire to be focused and to really apply our attention to specific things, to organize specific details in our life. Also with the Sun and Mercury both in Virgo, the idea of service to others, helping other people to improve their lives is also highlighted. There's also a strong interest in health and the integration of the body, mind, and spirit, because this integration helps us to improve our lives and be more effective. And this is what Virgo is always looking at. Virgo is also very concerned with matters involving work. This can include the tasks that we do in our job. It can include the work that we do around our house. It can include the to-do list, especially any of the tasks that we have to perform, the mundane details that we need to do because we live in a body on planet Earth. It's not concerned with anything having to do with status or the trappings of success. With Virgo, it's really more about the task at hand and about doing those things right. So this Virgo influence right now, I feel, can really help us. This Virgo influence can add some much needed stability and organization and strategizing that we might be lacking right now with Mars and Aries squaring all the Capricorn planets. Right now, Mars is virtually stationary in the sky as it prepares to turn retrograde on September 9th. Now, just to recap, when a planet turns retrograde, the planet obviously is not actually moving backwards in the sky, but we observe the movement of the planets from Earth because astrology is person-centered. We look at the sky from the perspective of our location on planet Earth. So because of that, sometimes from our vantage point, the planets appear to be moving backwards. In a typical retrograde cycle, the planet will be moving forwards, just in regular motion. It will suddenly come to a standstill as it prepares to turn retrograde. Just like if you're making a U-turn in your car, the car isn't really moving. The car is kind of standing still in one location while you make that U-turn. It's the same thing with the planet. And then, of course, the planet will eventually turn direct again and move forward. So right now we have Mars in the sky and Aries. It's squaring all the 3 planets that are in Capricorn, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, that are trying to hold on to the stability, hold on to power, control. Then Mars in Aries is sort of wild and reckless and just wants to resist the control and is all for individual rights. So Mars is at a standstill right now until September 9th when it turns retrograde. Then it will continue to be at a standstill for about a week or so as it picks up steam again in its retrograde passage. It's really not moving very much until the end of September. It's only going to travel 2 degrees between now and the end of September. So what that means is Mars is like a laser beam of focused energy with this Mars action, inspiration, motivation, also anger and frustration if we feel blocked. From a practical perspective, what this means is that it's very important to understand how to balance our own needs and our own desires and the things that we want to do and the things that we want in our lives with what we have to do, which is Capricorn. Capricorn is basically pull up your big girl pants and do what has to be done. And so that you can see where there's a lot of friction right now. That's why I'm really happy that we have this Virgo influence, which can really help us to kind of make a plan and see what's not working. What do I need to change in this circumstance? There's another somewhat smaller factor that we're also dealing with in the next week or two, and that's the fact that the asteroid Juno, which is in Libra, is sort of getting into the action here. The asteroids, I like to think of them as storytellers. I think of the planets as being more story makers. You know, they come in with a lot of force. They're like teachers. They help to create change. They have messages. The asteroids sort of fill in the details. They expand the story. And then the presence of Juno. Juno is about our responsibility in our relationships. Juno is known as the asteroid of marriage, but while many of us won't get married, we all have relationships. We all have responsibilities. Juno is about solidifying those responsibilities, the obligations that we make in a relationship, you know, for mutual support, for mutual admiration. So we have the asteroid Juno now, opposite Mars over the next week or two and squaring the Capricorn planets. So if you're an astrological newbie, all of this can all sound like a lot of just words, but I always try to translate it for you. So basically, really what this means is that our responsibilities to the people around us, the people that we're committed to, our business partners, our life partners, our children, our friends, our close friends, our families, our obligations are very important right now, and that's really what's sustaining us in these times. We can't forget about those obligations while we're struggling to see what we want in our own lives with Mars, which is very much more personal, which is all about, this is what I want, why can't I have it? Juno and Libra's like, but don't forget about your partners. And then the Capricorn planets are saying, it doesn't matter, we're in lockdown, you have to do what's right for your community. And there's a lot of fear around this virus spreading. We have Saturn and Pluto still in Capricorn. How much of this fear is reasonable? How much is rational? We don't even know. This is all very unpredictable right now. And then on top of this, in the United States, we have a big election coming up in the fall. I do want to make a video about this, and I'm a little nervous about it because whenever I do anything political, I tend to get a lot of extreme reaction on both sides. But because we have all of this intense planetary energies right now in the sky, really going through the end of October and not letting up so much until December, I think the jury is still out what's going to happen in the fall. We also are in the middle of a big retrograde cycle where we have between 5 and 7 planets retrograde from now until November. And when there's a lot of retrograde energy, it's difficult to really move forward. And all of this sort of peaks at the time of the election. So I think it's very likely there won't be a clear result, that there won't be a clear answers. And while this limbo is frustrating, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to gain real clarity about what our life is about, what we want, what we really want in our core, not just sort of what we want in our mind and what we always thought we would do, what we always thought we should do, but what is really in our heart. This is a perfect opportunity to go inside, delve deep within, and see what really is there. What changes do we need to make? What do we need to learn? So I've been talking about Mars, of course, for weeks, and how Mars is in a challenging square to the Capricorn planets. So a square, a challenging aspect, is an aspect of conflict. So when Mars was in a square to Jupiter at the beginning of July, beginning to the mid-July, everybody thinks they're right. Everybody thinks my way is the right way. Then Mars formed a square to Pluto. There was a lot of kind of oppressive force and a lot of darkness coming out. This week we have Mars in a square to Saturn. Mars squares Saturn and says, I don't care about your need to control me. I'm going to do what I think is right anyway. We have a lot of wildfires right now. This is fire season. Then we have all this fire in the sky. So it's an important time, especially with Mars in a square to Saturn, to try to be as reasonable as you can. This would not be a good time to go up to somebody who's not wearing a mask in a store and tell them that they're not doing the right thing, because everybody's tempers are inflamed. It's very hot. I think it was like 130 degrees in Death Valley last week. So this is a time to try to keep our tempers a little bit cooler, try to ground them, use that nice Virgo energy to see, okay, what can I really do to improve the situation? Early this week and in the middle of this week, we have some lovely alignments of Mercury, which has to do with the mind, communication, short journeys, the way we think and process information. So with these nice alignments of Mercury, our minds are likely to be very active, but still have some focus. On the 25th, we have a harmonious alignment between Mercury and Uranus, which can bring a lot of insights, a lot of higher wisdom. It's a wonderful time to be problem solving, or to, for us writers, it's a really good time to come up with new ideas. Or just if you're brainstorming, this is the perfect time for that. We do have an opposition between Venus and Jupiter. This can be somewhat stressful at times, but because Venus and Jupiter are both so benefic, they're both so beneficial to us, even a stressful aspect is not really very difficult. But what could occur at this time on the 25th, is that we may find that our relationships, there could be kind of a struggle for who's right, who's not right, who gets their way, who doesn't get their way. So that's about as stressful, I think, as that particular aspect is going to get. We do, all through this week though, remember Mars isn't really moving. So we still have that Mars, we can't just relax, but these aspects will help to soften that somewhat. Then on the 27th, we have a lovely harmonious trine between Venus and Neptune. Venus alignments typically only last for a couple of days, maybe one day, sometimes, 2. And because they're so soft, you might not even notice them. They're like a breath in the wind. But Venus aligning in a trine to Neptune is wonderful for love, for romance, for spirituality, for creativity. Anything that opens the heart is much easier when Venus is in a trine to Neptune. So this is going to be, I would say, between maybe Tuesday and Thursday. This is going to really help us to soften some of these fiery, Marsy, irritable interactions. Then on the 29th, we have a trine between Mercury and Jupiter, which is just a general feel-good alignment. It's a time when we generally feel more optimistic. We feel more open. We have Mercury, the planet of communication, the thought process, harmonizing with Jupiter, the planet of abundance, opportunities, confidence. So it's just a lovely couple of days right there. And that's going to really help us because Venus, which is in Cancer right now, where it's very sensitive, very loving, very nurturing, is in a challenging square to Pluto, which is none of those things. Pluto is a little bit ruthless. Pluto has to do with transformation, destruction of anything that's not serving us, and rebuilding. So in Venus, and also power and power conflicts. So when Venus is in a square to Pluto, as it is around the 30th of August, and for a day or two before and after, well, for a day before, maybe a day after, just watch for some power conflicts. Because we have these other harmonious aspects of Mercury, where we're able to think more positively and more intuitively, I think that will soften this Venus square to Pluto. But remember, we also have Mars, so we still have this sort of fire and this sort of underlying irritation that underlies all of these more positive, harmonious aspects. So the takeaway to all of this for the week is really just to remember that tempers can flare up any moment. They are primed for a spark, but we can use these positive energies to be able to make it through more successfully and use that fire energy for positive things to help energize us, to motivate us, to inspire us. That's what's really a beautiful thing about Mars and fire. And now let's talk about some of the lunar influences that we'll be seeing this week. The moon begins the week in Scorpio, and it will be in Scorpio until Tuesday at 8:49 a.m. Eastern Time. Please adjust for your own locality. While the moon is in Scorpio, we generally feel things more intensely. Scorpio is a water sign, so it's emotional, it's passionate. It's ruled by Mars, which is a fire planet. So we have some duality here between the softness of water and the fire of Mars. There's passion, there's a need to go deep and not to be superficial. So this is a positive time for important interactions with other people. It's a time when it may be difficult to be superficial, to act like everything is okay if it's not. So just remember that if there's anything that's really on your mind that you've been really wanting to talk about, this might be just the perfect time. Then on Tuesday morning, around 8:49 a.m. Eastern, the moon moves into Sagittarius. Sagittarius, of course, is the sign of adventure. Sagittarius is expansive, it's searching for truth, but not just for truth, like we usually think about it in a philosophical way. It's really searching for, what is my truth? What do I really believe? What gives my life meaning? Sagittarius can be sort of self-righteous for that reason. When the moon is in Sagittarius, and especially we have these challenges right now to Jupiter in the sky, the ruler of Sagittarius, with the 3 planets in Capricorn. Remember, we were talking about that. And Mars is squaring those planets still. There's a lot of ideological conflict right now happening in the sky. When the moon is in Sagittarius, we will likely feel more happy, more optimistic, more social, but also more self-righteous. This may seem counterintuitive to those of you who know something about astrology, because you would think that Scorpio, the planet of passion and intensity, might be not a good time to engage in difficult conversations, and you might think that Sagittarius is a good time. But I see it a little bit differently, because when the moon is in Scorpio, we kind of can't help ourselves. Everyone is more easily able to go deep. When the moon is in Sagittarius, which affects all of us to some degree, and it will affect some of us differently than others because we all have different natal charts. We all have different influences in our own personalities. But when the moon is in Sagittarius, there's more of a tendency to feel like we're right. And that can make arguments virtually impossible. You can't really argue with somebody who thinks they're right. There's no middle ground there. Whereas Scorpio really wants to get to the truth, to the root of the matter. Let me know in the comments as your week goes through and see whether you have any of these experiences and how that might have transpired. While the moon is in Sagittarius, it's going to be in a square to Neptune on Wednesday the 26th. When the moon is in a square to Neptune, that can add a level of confusion. It can be wonderful for dreams, for creativity, because the material world almost dissolves under a Neptune influence, and then what's left is a sort of dreamy magic, which can be a really wonderful thing. But it's not the best thing for sort of focus and being grounded and, doing practical things. So just try to remember that on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, the 27th at 1:37 p.m. Eastern Time, the moon will move into Capricorn. Then everything gets grounded. Then we have the sun and Mercury in Virgo helping us to organize. We have the moon in Capricorn, which helps us to feel more practical, more grounded, more structured. And while the moon is in Capricorn, it's going to be moving through all the Capricorn planets. So that's going to kind of intensify this Capricornian energy. Now, this can be very positive for applying yourself, using discipline, doing the hard things that have to be done. It can be a little challenging because of the challenging square from Mars. Remember Mars, when the moon is in a square to Mars, it can create an inflammation reaction that can be somewhat destabilizing when we are trying to be so grounded and so practical with all the Capricorn planets. Fortunately, we have all those very nice Mercury cycles happening at the same time, which is going to really help us to be able to think through any resistance, any issues that come up. So I think that's a good place to end for this week. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope I'll see you here next week. Have a great week.